from a visibility and observability standpoint. Hybrid connectivity brings in new elements that make the job of IT teams far more complex. And I'll take you through 3 layers from where we host applications to the network that sit in between users and applications. If you look at the hosting part, the first thing is one, you don't have access to the infrastructure layer on which those applications are hosted when you start using SaaS applications and PaaS applications, or you start using microservices. So it's far more complicated to instrument those parts. That's number one. Number two is those applications by nature are far more distributed. In the early days, we had a simplistic view of SaaS, for example, where users would connect through the internet to one location where the SaaS platform would be. The reality is actually far different from that. When you connect to a SaaS platform, you connect to 20 or 30 host names, and each host name actually takes you to a different place depending on where you connect from, which operator, from which location in the world. The resulting matrix is far more complex, and for example, capturing traffic on things like that is almost like impossible. And there is a second layer of complexity and challenges that come from the evolution of the network. How we go through the network. We go through strong encryption. When we connect to those services, you probably heard of perfect forward secrecy, which brings in new encryption schemes that are almost impossible to decrypt. And that takes away some ability from anything that relied on traffic analysis to monitor performance. So that's one. The second one is the appearance of zero trust networks and CASBs. Well, they bring in more complexity because every time you connect to a CASB, you go through a DNS resolution, you are redirected to a node that is dynamic. The path you're taking to that CASB node can also be dynamic and change through time. And of course, from the CASB to the actual workload, you've got the exact same system. So DNS, redirection, public networks. And that makes the understanding the connectivity between the end-to-end connectivity between the user and the workload far more complex. And finally, sometimes we simply put an overlay like an SD-WAN on top of the public connectivity, but while we had a certain doses of dynamic behavior with the SD-WAN, the underlay connectivity is also dynamic, can change paths, can change the location through different resolutions. And if you monitor only the overlay, there are good chances that you do not understand why the performance of that overlay changes if you don't have control on the underlay. And finally, the users. The users are distributed, and each user is also having multiple locations to work from. People work from the office, people work from anywhere, they travel, they work from home, they use multiple sets of connectivity to do that. And that's also a challenge for IT, because supporting users and making sure they work efficiently from all of those places brings a new set of challenges, and the performance rate that were acceptable before when working from home was an exception are no longer acceptable these days, and the lack of visibility we had on that part of the user access is unacceptable these days. So that's for the challenges that hybrid connectivity brings in. And the outcome of that is that the traditional solution we've put in place for network traffic analysis in the data center times cannot really make the move to that new environment and provide a solution to